My name is Charlotte Ayers. I'm 66 years old, and I've been retired for a little less than 2 years. I get about $2,500 a month in Social Security benefits. In a small town in Ohio, that's enough to get by. As long as I watch every penny, it covers me just fine. My husband passed away young. After my son, Benjamin, got married, I've been on my own, living alone in this old house, keeping it warm with memories. At my age, isn't that what life is supposed to be about? Family gathered, laughter echoing through the halls. With Christmas just around the corner, Benjamin called to say he wanted me to spend the holidays with them this year. In that moment, my heart lit up like someone had handed me a steaming mug of hot chocolate in the dead of winter, filling me with a warmth so deep it reached right down to my bones. As soon as we hung up, I got right to work. I pulled an old suitcase from the back of the closet and wiped it down again and again until it was clean enough to catch a faint reflection. The new sweater I had been saving for the holidays was already neatly folded, waiting. One by one, I packed it along with a few other things: the smoked sausage rolls Benjamin adored as a boy, Amanda's favorite local honey, and a few homemade jams carefully, making sure not to forget a thing. As I was packing, my fingers brushed against an old, yellowed photograph. Benjamin was just a teenager in that picture, his wide grin beaming, those two little front teeth peeking through. Beside him stood a younger me, hair thick and black, a confident smile on my face, eyes brimming with a fierce, unwavering hope for life. The decades had passed in a flash. My whole life, I gave it all to this family, to Benjamin. When he was little, I worked shifts at the textile mill, nights, evenings, coming home so tired I could barely stand, just to make sure he had a better life. When the mill shut down, I sold goods at flea markets, did odd jobs, whatever it took. I fought tooth and nail so Benjamin could go to college, so he could have a good start in life. It was only when he was settled, married, with a stable life of his own, that I felt like I could finally breathe. Retirement has been simple, like a plain glass of water. It was only when I saw Benjamin and his family that life tasted a little sweeter. I just didn't know that sweet sip was already laced with poison. When I arrived at Benjamin's apartment building in Chicago, the elevator doors opened and Amanda was already there, waiting. She smiled brightly and rushed toward me. "Charlotte, you finally made it. It was freezing outside. Come on in." She took my suitcase with cheerful hands, bustling about. Sit, I'll get you some hot tea to warm you up." Benjamin poked his head out from the study, a tired smile on his face. "Hey, Mom." He looked drained, with dark circles under his eyes. "Year-end is always a madhouse," he explained. "I've been working non-stop." I nodded, a pang of concern in my chest. "You only get one body, honey. Don't run it into the ground." Amanda quickly returned with a steaming mug of tea, the welcoming aroma filling the living room. The warmth from the radiators enveloped me. It was a world away from the chill of my own little house. Amanda tucked my suitcase into the guest room and hurried to start dinner. The spread she prepared was hearty and impressive: fragrant, juicy roast beef, tender, buttery pan-seared salmon, and a handful of bright, refreshing side dishes. Her cooking had improved immensely. I couldn't help but praise her, and she laughed, her eyes crinkling. "I'm so glad you like it. You should come more often. I'll cook for you every day." But for all her easy smiles, there was something a little too polished, a little too eager. She kept piling food onto my plate, pampering me with an almost flawless care, like a new jacket that doesn't quite sit right on the shoulders close, but not quite right. Meanwhile, Benjamin shoveled food down thoughtlessly, his eyes darting to his phone again and again, as if something was pulling at him. The table felt alive on the surface, but underneath, it was like a sliver of bone caught in my throat, impossible to swallow, impossible to spit out. The next morning, Amanda's parents arrived. As soon as they walked in, Patricia wrapped Amanda in a tight, loving hug. They chattered nonstop, their high-pitched laughter filling the room as if the rest of us had disappeared. I stood off to the side, invisible. For a moment, I almost felt myself fading into the wallpaper. Robert was more reserved. He shook my hand and exchanged a few pleasantries. Patricia, on the other hand, had the air of someone used to sitting behind a large desk. She'd worked in an office at City Hall before she retired, and it showed. She glanced at me sideways, her eyes scanning my worn wool coat, the one I'd had for years, thick and sturdy, warm even if it was a little dated, and she gave a little twitch of her lips that wasn't quite a smile. To her, I must have looked out of place. The coat that had always made me feel prepared, even proud, now suddenly felt thin and tired under her gaze. Dinner that night was laced with a subtle tension. Benjamin and Robert traded conversational snippets about the latest financial news, while Amanda and her mother chattered animatedly about neighborhood gossip, grocery store discounts, and whose kids had recently been promoted. I just sat there quietly, picking at my food, feeling like an outsider. Patricia's voice, sharp and forceful, soon commandeered the conversation. "Robert and I clear nearly $15,000 a month between our pensions," she said, lifting her teacup with practiced grace. She glanced at me, quick and appraising. "Our expenses are minimal, so life has been quite comfortable. We just bought a little condo down in Florida last month. It's perfect for the winter warm weather, clean air." She turned to Amanda with a smile. "You two should start planning ahead. Housing prices are only going up. Better to upgrade to a bigger house now, especially before any babies come along." Amanda nodded quickly. "We're working on it, Mom." Then Patricia's gaze shifted back to me, her tone dripping with false concern. "And Charlotte, how's your health holding up? Amanda told me your pension isn't very high. Are you able to cover your daily expenses?" Her voice was light, but there was a glint in her eye, a subtle but cutting judgment. I forced a calm smile, though something tightened in my chest. "I make about $2,500 a month. It's enough for my daily needs. My health is about the same, some old aches, but nothing serious." "Oh, 2,500! Patricia drew the words out, arching her eyebrows slightly, her voice filled with a delicate, almost imperceptible pity. I picked up my teacup, hiding behind it, concealing the sting of pride that washed over me. Only now, at this age, did I truly understand, for some people, your entire worth is summed up by the numbers in your bank account, and mine didn't even earn me a polite nod in their world. After dinner, Benjamin called Robert into the study to consult on some investment matters, leaving Amanda and Patricia on the living room sofa, half watching TV, half whispering to each other. I felt exhausted, not in my body, but deep down, where the hurt settles and won't leave. I excused myself, saying I needed to rest, and retreated to the guest room. It was a small room, but clean and bright. A small potted ivy sat on the nightstand, its leaves, lush and green, giving off a quiet, tenacious vitality. Inside me, though, everything felt heavy and stuck. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at the dull gray sky, my mind drifting. I thought about the winter Benjamin wanted those expensive basketball sneakers, how I worked a full week of night shifts at the warehouse just to afford them. I thought about his college years, when I sent him every hard-earned dollar while living on ramen noodles and tap water myself. I thought about his wedding, when I emptied my savings and even borrowed from friends to help him with the down payment on their first house. I've never done anything extraordinary in my life. All I ever tried to do was make things easier for my son. I always thought that would be enough, but now it felt like it was never even close. I stayed in the guest room for a long while before finally getting up, needing some air. I opened the door carefully and was about to step out when I heard low voices coming from the living room. It was Amanda and Patricia, speaking softly, their words quiet but clear as a bell in the silent house. "Mom, what is that old woman going to do with $2,500 a month? She gets by now, but what happens when she gets sick? Am I just supposed to drop everything and take care of her?" Amanda's voice, tinged with a barely concealed irritation, struck me like a hammer blow. My foot froze mid-step, pinned to the floor by an invisible force. "Exactly. I warned you," Patricia said coolly, her voice sharp and precise. "That measly pension of hers barely covers her expenses. If she gets sick, she'll be a burden on you." I held my breath, my palms slick with a cold sweat. I tried to retreat silently, but their words clawed at my ears, refusing to let go. "What's the point of keeping her around?" Amanda muttered, a low, bitter whisper that cut me to the core. $2,500 a month wouldn't even cover a halfway decent home care nurse. "That's why," Patricia said with a terrifying calm, "you need to get the house sorted out while she's still clear-headed. Get her to sign it over to you and Benjamin before it's too late." "The house?" Amanda sounded hesitant, but there was a greedier tone underneath. That house is old, but it's in a good location. We could probably sell it for 300, maybe 400,000. Exactly, Patricia pressed, her voice seasoned with a cold calculus. You need to get it in your hands. Otherwise, if she loses her mind and leaves it to someone else, you'll have no one to blame but yourself. And besides, Amanda added softly, she's been coughing a lot lately, and she looks pretty pale too. Who knows how much longer she'll hold on. Those words sliced through my heart like a blade, sharp and merciless. I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice. My limbs froze. Even breathing hurt. A pain, a rage, and a deep, gut-wrenching sense of betrayal washed over me, drowning me completely. I always thought that Amanda, despite her little moments of pettiness, at least respected me as her mother-in-law. I never realized that to her, I was just a negligible burden, an aging liability to be managed, perhaps even discarded when I became too heavy. All those smiles, the warm welcomes, the carefully prepared meals. It was all a performance. And now I had seen the script before the final act. I bit my lip so hard I could taste blood. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I held them back. I couldn't fall apart here. I couldn't let them see me break. I backed into the guest room, moving like a defeated soldier, retreating from the battlefield. My chest felt torn open, but deep inside, a painful clarity took hold. I couldn't stay here another minute. This home, with its hot tea and cozy rooms, had become a gilded cage. Without hesitation, I yanked open my suitcase and started throwing my things back inside, one by one. My movements were cold and mechanical, as if I were burying the last shreds of my dignity. The new wool coat I'd bought for the holidays. The smoked sausage rolls I'd spent days preparing. The jar of homemade jam I'd wrapped so carefully. It all felt like a cruel joke now, mocking my foolish hopes. I fumbled for a pen on the nightstand and, with trembling hands, scribbled a short note. Our neighbor, Ellen, had an emergency. I went over to help. Don't worry. The handwriting was crooked and messy, a mirror of the chaos raging inside me. I took a deep breath, grabbed my suitcase, and quietly opened the door. In the living room, the television was still droning on. Amanda and Patricia were deep in conversation, laughing softly, oblivious to everything. Head down, I made my way to the door, slipped on my shoes, and silently opened the front door. In less than 30 seconds, I was outside. The wind hit my face, raw and biting, but no amount of winter air could match the chill that had already settled deep inside me. I didn't look back. I gripped the handle of my suitcase and just kept walking, one step after another, into the night. When I got back to my little house, the sky was already pitch black. I didn't bother turning on the lights. Fumbling in the dark, I made my way to the sofa and collapsed onto it, my body heavy and limp. The suitcase was abandoned by the door, slumped against the wall like a stray dog no one wanted. The house was eerily silent, broken only by the occasional sweep of headlights across the windows, casting fleeting, pale shadows across the room. In the darkness, I could hear my own heart beating. And then, finally, the sobs I had been choking back all night. Tears came in a hot rush, scalding against my cold hands. For the first time in my life, I felt completely alone, utterly abandoned. The family I thought I could lean on, the bond I had spent a lifetime building. It had all been constructed on the flimsy foundation of money and convenience. In their eyes, I wasn't even worth that. Just an old woman with a measly $2,500 pension, a future burden to be gotten rid of as quickly and quietly as possible. I don't know how long I cried. Long enough for my tears to run dry? Long enough for my heart to turn cold? No, I wasn't going to resign myself to this. I couldn't. For once in my life, I needed to live for myself. Slowly, I lifted my head and stared into the endless black of the night beyond my window. Maybe overhearing their conversation wasn't an accident. Maybe it was the universe giving me one last wake-up call. It was time. Time to reevaluate my life. Time to take my future back. I fumbled for the lamp beside the sofa and flicked it on. The light wasn't strong, but it pushed back the darkness, illuminating the room, and deep inside me, a tiny, stubborn light flickered back to life. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Benjamin. His name glowed on the screen, familiar and heavy. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Mom, why did you leave so suddenly?" Benjamin's voice was thick with concern and confusion. "Amanda said you left a note about an emergency with your neighbor, Ellen." I cleared my throat, steadying my voice. "Yes. Ellen's husband had a sudden heart attack. She panicked and called me for help. It was a lie, and it sat like a stone in my chest, heavy and suffocating." "Oh, is everything okay now?" Benjamin asked. "Yes, it's fine now. They got him to the hospital." I continued the lie, a bitter taste rising in my throat. "Good, good. Mom, please take care of yourself, okay? If anything comes up, you have to let us know." He paused, then added, "I'll try to come see you in a few days." "No need," I said quickly, my voice soft but firm. "Focus on your work. I'm fine here." After I hung up, I let out a long breath, but for some reason, the air felt even heavier. Not long after, Amanda called. "Charlotte, why did you leave without a word?" "We were so worried about you," she said, her voice dripping with a perfectly measured, perfectly sweet concern. But I could hear it, that faint thread of relief in her voice, like someone who had just shrugged off an unwanted burden. "There was an emergency at home." "It's handled now," I said calmly. "Oh, but you have to take care of yourself, okay? Promise me you'll let us know if you ever need anything. Don't try to handle everything on your own," she gushed, her words wrapping around me like a web of careful lies. I murmured a few polite replies and hung up. Staring at the dark screen in my hand, I let out a bitter, broken smile. The cruelest part of it all was knowing I had to play along. To finish the performance they had so carefully staged, to pretend everything was fine. Maybe that's what being an adult really is, smiling through the bruises, covering the pain with silence. 2 days after Valentine's Day, Benjamin finally came to see me. He sat stiffly on the sofa, fiddling with his hands, like he was carrying something heavy he didn't know how to put down. "Mom, that day," he began, his voice barely a whisper. Did you overhear anything?" My heart gave a little lurch, but my face remained placid, unreadable. "Overhear what?" "No," I said, my tone light and serene. Benjamin stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to read something hidden in my eyes. I held his gaze steadily, outwardly calm, even as my heart was quietly bleeding in my chest. No, I couldn't tell him, not now. If I laid it all out, it would only make things harder for him and for me. There was no point. He finally dropped his gaze, and after a long pause, he mumbled, "Mom, sometimes Amanda. She says things she doesn't really mean. Please, don't take it to heart." In the end, he chose her. I nodded slightly, saying nothing more. The room fell into an awkward silence, broken only by the steady tick-tock of the old wall clock. Benjamin stayed a while longer, fussing over my health and reminding me to take my medicine, before he got up and left. I watched from the window as he hurried down the stairs and disappeared down the street, a small, lonely figure swallowed by the gray afternoon. There was sadness in me. Disappointment, too, but mostly a tired, familiar acceptance. The son I had poured my life into would never truly understand me. After Benjamin left, the house returned to its usual empty quiet. I sat alone on the sofa, listening to the second hand of the clock tick by. Each click was a dull, echoing reminder of how empty my days had become. I began to think, really think, for the first time. What should life after retirement really look like? Grocery shopping, cooking chores, an occasional game of chess, or some small talk with old friends at the park? It was all so flat, so lukewarm, like a glass of water left out too long, not hot, not cold, tasteless and forgettable. That night at Benjamin's, the words I overheard had landed like a muffled thunderclap, cutting through the fog of my complacency. I couldn't live like this anymore. I got up and started sorting through the old house I had lived in for most of my life. I threw open dust-filled closets and pulled out heaps of forgotten odds and ends. Piece by piece, I sorted through them, tossing the useless things into trash bags, carefully setting aside the ones that still meant something. Buried deep within an old wooden chest, I found relics from another life. Yellowed photo albums. One showed me in work clothes, smiling brightly at the factory. Another showed me and my late husband on our wedding day, him in a sharp suit, me in a simple white dress, shyly leaning into him. And then there was Benjamin, chubby and rosy-cheeked, a little boy with a beaming smile. Tucked between the photos were certificates I hadn't seen in decades. Outstanding worker, senior technician, and then a faded, old membership card for the local photography club. I picked it up and gently blew the dust off, running my fingers over the faded gold lettering. And just like that, the memories came flooding back. As a young woman, I had loved photography. Even when money was tight, I saved for months to buy my first camera, a used Canon AE1. Everywhere I went, the camera went with me. I even joined the City Photography Association, learning the tricks of the trade from seasoned photographers. A few of my photos were even featured in the factory's internal newsletters. But life got busier. Bills needed to be paid, Benjamin needed raising, and slowly, photography faded into the background. The camera was relegated to a corner, forgotten under a layer of dust. Remembering it now, those days spent chasing light through a viewfinder were some of the purest, most authentic moments of my life. Hard, yes, but so real, so full. I carefully set the old membership card down and felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in years. A spark of excitement. Why couldn't I pick it back up? I still had time. I still had the strength. I refused to let the rest of my life play out in muted silence, unnoticed by anyone. I rummaged through the closet and, after a bit of digging, I finally unearthed my old Canon camera. I wiped it down with trembling hands, clearing the dust from its body. It was old, a relic, but it was still whole, still beautiful. In that moment, I made a decision. I would enroll in a photography course at the local community college. I would start over, on the right foot this time. My biggest enemy wasn't sickness. It wasn't loneliness. It was surrender. And I was done surrendering. The next day, dressed in a clean, neatly pressed sweater, I walked into the admissions office at the local community college. The admissions officer was kind and patient, helping me enroll in an introductory photography class. Seeing the words Photography 101 printed at the top of the registration form made my heart pound with a mix of nerves and excitement, just like the first time I ever collected a paycheck. Clutching my brand new student ID, I walked out of the building into a sunny afternoon. The light felt like a blessing on my shoulders. In that moment, I could almost see the woman I was in my 20s, camera in hand, eyes wide open to the world. Life at the community college turned out to be even more enriching than I had imagined. Most of my classmates were retirees like me, rediscovering parts of themselves they had left behind. They were full of laughter, easy conversation, and stories that tumbled out of them a mile a minute. Our instructor, Mr. Peterson, was a retired news photographer with a sharp wit and a bottomless well of stories. Every lesson was packed with humor and wisdom, and even his smallest anecdotes had us roaring with laughter. I threw myself into learning. And before long, I found a group of kindred spirits. There was Marta, a former architect, whose photographs of building structures were breathtaking. Tom, a retired philosophy professor who had a passion for capturing street life and candid human moments. And Linda, a bubbly soul whose photos were always bursting with flowers and blue skies. We clicked right away and formed our own little photography group, giving it a funny name, the Golden Lens Club. Every weekend, we would go on photo walks together. My old Canon was clunky compared to everyone's modern gear, but the black and white images it produced had a depth and a soul that no new technology could replicate. Later, encouraged by Mr. Peterson, I saved up a few months of my pension and bought a beginner's DSLR camera. I started learning post-processing techniques, diving into the world of light adjustments, cropping, and color grading. Suddenly, my days were filled with purpose and joy, studying the light, framing shots, tweaking camera settings, perfecting the vibrancy of a photo. I felt like I had traveled back to a time when I was strong, alive, and full of energy. Where time once trickled by like a dripping faucet, now I found myself wishing each day had 30 hours instead of 24. Not long after, the community center announced a photography exhibition titled Living Our Best Lives. Our Golden Lens Club submitted a few pieces. To my astonishment, one of my photos, Sunset on Main Street, 1 second place. The photo captured a quiet small-town street, bathed in a golden twilight, with an old man sitting peacefully on his porch, a pipe between his teeth, completely at ease with the world. That old man was Walter, Ellen's husband, sitting right outside their house on Main Street. After the exhibition, the local newspaper even ran a feature on me, complete with a picture and a headline that read, "Retired factory worker rediscovers passion through the lens." Holding that newspaper in my hands, seeing my name and my picture in print, a deep, indescribable pride welled up inside me. It turns out there are countless ways to live out old age. Just like in photography, change your perspective, and the whole picture transforms. I was no longer anyone's burden, anyone's afterthought. I was the protagonist of my own life. Somehow, Benjamin got a hold of that newspaper article and showed up at my house shortly after. He had the paper in his hand, his face lit up with a mixture of surprise and what almost looked like disbelief and pride. "Mom, you're amazing. You really kept this one under wraps, the award and everything," he laughed, half joking. But the genuine admiration in his eyes was unmistakable. "It's nothing," I said, feigning modesty, though my heart was doing cartwheels inside. Benjamin watched me carefully for a moment. "You look different, I swear," he said. "You seem brighter. There's this energy about you. For the first time, I could feel it." His gaze had shifted. It was no longer the polite, dutiful concern he used to offer. It was real respect, something warmer, something that filled my heart with a soft, quiet joy. A few days later, Amanda called. We weren't far into our chat when she casually dropped, "Charlotte, I hear you're getting really serious about photography? Even winning awards? Those cameras must be pretty expensive, right?" I immediately caught the undertone in her voice. She wasn't just making small talk. She was probing, maybe worried I was burning through my savings. I smiled into the phone. "Oh, it's not that big of a deal. Just a little hobby. I've been learning about some small investments too, saving up some extra cash for equipment." I didn't mention what kind of investments, or how much I'd made. I left her to wonder. There was a brief, almost imperceptible pause on the other end of the line, before Amanda's voice turned even warmer. "Wow, that's so amazing. You're just living your best life, Charlotte. Just take care of yourself, okay? Don't overdo it." After I hung up, I smiled to myself. Funny, isn't it? The less you seek validation, the more cautiously others approach. It's just human nature. Those you lean on will take you for granted. But those who stand on their own make others uneasy. As time went on, my little photography hobby started to gain real momentum. I began uploading my landscape and street photos to an online photography platform. At first, it was just for fun. But slowly, messages started trickling in, people asking to buy the rights to my photos for websites, magazines, or to decorate coffee shops. At a friend's suggestion, I opened a small online store selling prints of my work. At first, I treated it like a side project. But to my surprise, the business started to take off. A few of my photos ended up on the covers of books from small publishers. Some were purchased by independent coffee shops to decorate their walls. Others were bought by individuals to decorate their homes. After deducting platform fees and printing costs, I was making an extra $300 to $400 a month. It wasn't a fortune, but to me, it meant everything. It wasn't about the money itself. It was about proving that I could still create value, on my own terms, in my own way. Amanda eventually heard about my little success story through a mutual friend. After that, her attitude did a complete 180. Suddenly, Amanda was calling me every few days, checking in with a sweetness that bordered on overkill. "Charlotte, are you free this weekend? Come over for dinner. I'm making pot roast. Charlotte, it's getting cold. I bought you a new sweater. When can you come pick it up?" Her enthusiasm was almost suffocating, and I knew exactly what was fueling it. I turned down most of her invitations with a polite smile. "Amanda, that's so sweet, but I'm going away with my photography group this weekend. I don't really need a new sweater. Maybe you could give it to your mom." "Thanks for thinking of me, though. I've been pretty busy lately, but I'm taking good care of myself." I told her about my upcoming photography exhibitions, about the long road trips I was planning with my Golden Lens friends, about how busy and exciting my days had become. I held no grudge. I just had no intention of re-entering a relationship built on pretense and convenience. Once you see people clearly, it's easier to let them go. I no longer needed anyone else's approval to measure my own worth. The world likes to define wealth in numbers, but I learned something far more valuable. True wealth is freedom, especially the freedom that comes from living untethered to anyone's guilt, obligation, or expectations. My photography journey was picking up more and more steam. At one exhibition, a well-known local photographer saw my work. He kept praising my photo, Sunset on Main Street, saying it conveyed a rare emotional honesty, warm, real, and full of human tenderness. Thanks to his recommendation, I was invited to feature my work at the upcoming City Arts Festival. It was an honor beyond my wildest imagination. I carefully selected 5 of my best pieces, re-edited, printed, and framed them. On opening day, I wore a new gray-blue trench coat, my exhibitor's badge pinned proudly to my chest. Standing in front of my photos, I felt a mix of nerves and pride churning inside me. The exhibition hall was buzzing with visitors. I watched with a pounding heart as people stopped in front of my photographs, studying them, whispering to each other. Some young people even took out their phones to take pictures of them, framing their shots carefully, almost reverently. The feeling of being truly seen, truly acknowledged, was overwhelming and beautiful. For a moment, it was like I was 30 years old again. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted 2 familiar figures, Benjamin and Amanda. They stood at the edge of the crowd, looking at my photos, then at me. Their faces were an open book surprise, disbelief, and something harder to place discomfort, maybe even a hint of regret. Amanda took a deep breath, plastered on a bright smile, and walked over. "Charlotte, congratulations. Your work is incredible, absolutely professional," she gushed, her voice a little too loud, her expression a little too tight, the emotions churning in her eyes like a storm she couldn't contain. Benjamin followed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Mom? Seriously? I had no idea you were this good." I nodded calmly. "Thank you." Inside, I felt only stillness. The great irony of life, the moment you no longer crave someone's approval, is the moment they rush to offer it. But by then, their applause means nothing. After the exhibition, Benjamin and Amanda insisted on taking me to dinner to celebrate. I let them. We ended up at a cozy Italian restaurant nearby, in a private room. The table was covered with rich, colorful dishes, and the mood felt forced into a kind of strained cheerfulness. Benjamin kept topping off my glass, showering me with compliments. Amanda wore a radiant smile, piling food onto my plate, pampering me with a warmth that was a little over the top. Beneath the surface, I saw it with perfect clarity. This dinner wasn't just a celebration, it was a setup. Sure enough, after the 3rd glass of wine and the 5th course, Benjamin finally put down his cup and spoke, feigning casualness. "So, Mom, Amanda and I have been looking at houses lately." I nodded slightly, waiting for the real reason. "This apartment is getting a little cramped," he continued, "especially if we're thinking about starting a family. We found a place 3 bedrooms, great location, really perfect, but we're just a little short on the down payment." He shot Amanda a quick look. Amanda immediately leaned in, her voice syrupy sweet. "Charlotte, we were thinking, since your photography has been going so well, winning awards and selling pieces and all, maybe you could, help us out a little." Her eyes were bright with expectation, barely concealing the urgency underneath. In the end, it was the same old dance. They wanted money. I smiled to myself. What a predictable routine. I put my silverware down slowly, dabbed my mouth with a napkin, and looked at them, perfectly calm. "A new house sounds wonderful," I said smoothly, as if commenting on the weather, "but I'm afraid I won't be much help." Amanda's smile faltered. Her voice sharpened slightly. "Why not?" "Well," I said, gently tapping the rim of my water glass, "photography isn't exactly a cheap hobby. New equipment, travel expenses for shoots. And lately, I've been pooling funds with a few friends to open a small photography studio. It's going to require a considerable upfront investment." I let that sink in before delivering the final blow, still smiling. "Besides, I'm planning a big trip to Alaska later this year to photograph the northern lights. I've already got the money for that all set aside. Benjamin ducked his head, pretending to take a sip of tea. Amanda's face tightened, disappointment and barely concealed frustration flashing across her face. How interesting. When you finally build a world of your own, they are left on the outside, knocking at the door in vain. The so-called celebration dinner ended exactly as I expected, not with warmth, but with a quiet, tense departure. A few days later, I received an unexpected call, Patricia, Amanda's mother. Her voice was gushing with enthusiasm, heaping on praise so thick it almost dripped through the receiver. She called me an inspiration, full of hidden talents, and insisted I was living life to the fullest. Then came the real reason for her call. "Charlotte, are you free soon? Why don't you come over for tea? We can catch up." All my instincts went on high alert. Still, I agreed. I was curious, what were they really up to? When I arrived at their house, Patricia greeted me like a long-lost celebrity. The tea flowed endlessly. A spread of imported pastries covered the table, and the compliments kept coming like a broken faucet. Robert, Amanda's father, sat stiffly to one side, looking like he wanted to disappear, managing to force out an occasional awkward chuckle. After a grueling round of small talk, Patricia finally dropped the act. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a honeyed whisper. "Charlotte, there's something I wanted to mention. My son, Amanda's brother, David, he's working on an incredible project right now. Huge potential. It's really big." She lowered her voice even more. "He just needs a little startup capital." I smiled coolly to myself. There it was. Finally, Patricia pressed on, her voice syrupy and insistent. "I mean, I know you have a good eye for investments lately, and with your photography sales going so well, why not get in on it? It wouldn't take much, maybe 100,000. There will be dividends by the end of the year, much easier than earning it one photo at a time." The glint in her eyes was unmistakable. She wasn't seeing me anymore. She was seeing a walking, talking ATM. I lifted my teacup, blew gently on the rim, and said slowly, "Patricia, thank you so much for thinking of me, but I'm afraid I can't help." Her smile froze. "Why not?" she asked, struggling to keep her tone light. "To be honest," I said, setting my cup down carefully, my expression as serious as hers was fake, "I just partnered with some friends to open a photography studio. I'm pretty much tapped out. At this point, I couldn't squeeze out a single dime if I tried." "A photography studio?" Patricia blinked, clearly not expecting that. "That's right," I said with a bright smile. "We're just getting started, up to our eyeballs in it." Her expression soured slightly, but she forced another brittle smile, and the topic was dropped. People reveal their true selves when they think you have something they need. When you're down and out, they ignore you. When you shine, they rush to place a crown on your head. This kind of cheap affection? I had long since learned to smile and politely decline. As for my little studio, it was barely up and running, but we had already landed our first big contract. A travel company fell in love with our photography style and hired us to shoot a promotional campaign for their new Northern Lights tour in Alaska. When the contract was signed and the advance payment hit the account, the whole office erupted like it was Christmas morning. It wasn't just a job. It was a dream I had shelved decades ago, finally coming true. I threw myself into preparations with the excitement of a kid before a school field trip. Researching weather patterns, upgrading gear, cleaning lenses, it was a beautiful frenzy. When Benjamin heard I was going to Alaska for a whole month, he called immediately. "Mom, Alaska? For a month? Are you serious? At your age? It's freezing up there. Are you sure you can handle it?" His voice was laced with concern, but underneath it, there was something else, something harder, sharper. "I'm great," I laughed. "I'll be with the whole team. We'll look out for each other. But a whole month? You're the backbone of that studio, and, all the travel expenses must cost a fortune?" There it was, the real concern. He was afraid I was investing too much in myself, cutting off the backup plan he had quietly kept in his back pocket. I sighed inwardly, but kept my voice cheerful. "Sure, it's expensive, but this time, the travel agency is footing the bill. As for the studio, Tom and Linda can handle everything while I'm away. Mom, maybe you should think about it a little more. No need. I cut him off gently. The ticket's already booked. I spent my youth tied down by mortgages, tuition fees, and endless responsibilities. Now, it's my turn. I'm not missing another horizon. Hassan was silent on the other end of the line. In our youth, survival was the priority, crushed by loans and obligations we never questioned. But as I got older, I learned the real lesson. Freedom isn't something you are given. It is something you earn, step by step, through effort and deliberation. Alaska turned out to be even more breathtaking than I ever imagined. The auroras danced across the night sky, spilling waves of light like an artist casting entire galaxies onto a canvas. We, a motley crew of veteran photographers, hauled our heavy gear out into sub-zero nights, trudging over frozen ground to capture every fleeting miracle of color. It was exhausting, cold, and grueling work, but my heart hadn't felt so alive in years. It was pure, unfiltered joy. Over the course of a month, not only did we complete the shoot successfully, but our little studio also earned its first substantial paycheck. And most importantly, on this trip, I met someone who would change my life. Her name was Emily Sanchez. She was 2 years younger than me and also a solo traveler chasing the northern lights. We met by chance at a small outdoor market in a quiet town. A conversation sparked, and before long, we realized we had much more in common than just photography. Emily had been a community college professor before she retired. Her husband had passed away a few years ago, and her children had scattered to other states. Now she lived alone, independent, vibrant, and full of stories. We talked about photography, travel, life, and somewhere in the second half of the trip, we became inseparable, taking pictures of each other, sharing meals, looking out for one another. With Emily, everything felt easy and light. There were no ulterior motives, no obligations, just a simple, genuine friendship. As the trip ended, she gave me a tight hug and smiled. "Charlotte, meeting you has been the best part of this whole adventure. When you're all recovered, next stop Iceland? The northern lights are even more spectacular there." "You're on," I laughed, without a moment's hesitation. When I got home, I stared at my growing bank balance, the hundreds of stunning photos stored on my hard drive, the goofy selfies Emily and I had taken together, and I felt a contentment that ran deeper than words. It turned out, life after 60 could be even more exciting than the years before it, especially when you finally stopped wasting time on people and things that didn't deserve you. Emily and I stayed in close touch, trading photos, sharing editing tips, and planning our Icelandic adventure. It felt like life was finally moving forward. I was finally moving forward. But life, unpredictable as ever, threw me a curveball. One morning, while browsing for new gear online, a sudden dizziness washed over me. I felt a numbness down my right side. My words started to slur. My heart sank. I dialed 911 immediately. At the hospital, they confirmed it a mild stroke. Luckily, I got help fast enough to avoid major damage, but the doctors insisted I stay for observation for at least a week. Lying in that sterile hospital bed, under bright fluorescent lights with the antiseptic stench thick in the air, a profound sadness washed over me. Iceland would have to wait. Emily visited almost daily. She brought homemade soup, the latest photography magazines, and a warmth that cut through the chill of the hospital walls. She even helped out at the studio, making sure everything was running smoothly. Her kindness was simple, pure, and real, like sunlight spilling through a frosted window. Benjamin and Amanda came too. They were attentive, moving like the perfect caregivers. Benjamin ran errands. Amanda hovered by the bedside, offering water, peeling fruit, and fussing over me. Watching them, I felt a complex tangle of emotions. I knew deep down how much of their concern was genuine, and how much was pure performance. A week later, I was discharged. The doctors advised me to take it easy, eat carefully, and avoid stress. The day I got home, Amanda made her move. "Charlotte," she said brightly, "since you're just out of the hospital, we're so worried about you being alone. Why don't you come live with us? We can take proper care of you." Her eyes shone with what she clearly thought was convincing sincerity, but I could smell the real motive, sharp and bitter underneath all the sweetness. Real care has no strings attached. Calculated filial piety always stinks. I leaned back on the sofa, cradling the mug of soup Emily had brought me, letting its warmth seep through my fingers and into my heart. "Thank you, Amanda," I said with a kind, firm smile. "But there's no need. I'm recovering well. I'm used to living alone, and I enjoy my freedom." I paused, then added casually, "Besides, Emily lives just a few blocks away. She can pop over if I ever need anything." I watched the flicker in Amanda's face, the smile that tightened just a little too quickly, the tiny glint of something sharp in her eyes. But she recovered fast, pulling the mask of the concerned daughter-in-law back on. Of course. It's just, accidents happen. We just want to be prepared." She hesitated for a moment, then lobbed the real bombshell, her voice light as a feather, almost offhand. "Charlotte, maybe it's time to think about getting a will drawn up? Not for any bad reason, of course, just for security. It's better to have everything in order than to deal with trouble later, right?" There it was. A fox can't hide its tail forever. I smiled sweetly, playing my part to perfection. "A will?" I said, scratching my head as if confused. "Oh, I don't really have much. Just this old house and a small pension. Enough to get by." Then I added breezily, "And my hands are so full right now, the studio keeps me busy. Maybe when things quiet down a bit, I'll think about it." Amanda's eyes darkened for just an instant, a flash of raw frustration she couldn't hide, before she plastered that sweet smile back on her face. Sometimes, playing dumb is the sharpest armor an old woman can wear. After the hospital stay, Amanda's attentiveness became almost comical. She used to call occasionally, but now she was at my house every other day, laden with organic fruits, supplements, and a syrupy sweet smile. "Charlotte, how have you been feeling lately? If you need anything at all, just say the word." She was warmer than any daughter, but her eyes wouldn't stop roaming, scanning my living room, lingering on the shelves, the desk, the drawers, and her casual conversation was anything but. "Charlotte, your photography studio is doing so well, isn't it? What kind of big projects are you working on? Emily, she lives alone too, right? Do you two see each other a lot? Charlotte, it might be time to renovate this place. Imagine how great it would look with a modern touch." Every question was dipped in honey, but it carried a fine, sharp probe just beneath the surface. I knew exactly what she was doing. Still, I smiled politely, kept my tone light, and gave her nothing. But then, one afternoon, everything changed. I had gone to take a shower. Since I was still recovering, I moved slowly, taking my time. When I came out, a towel over my shoulders, I passed by the study, and through the half-open door, I saw her. Amanda, standing by my desk, rifling through papers with the focus of a thief. I crept closer, my heart pounding. She was holding my bank statements and my insurance policies. For a second, the world tilted. The chill that ran through me was more intense than any Alaskan wind had ever thrown at me. She had waited until I was vulnerable, literally bare and defenseless, and started snooping through my private documents. The rage that surged in me almost exploded right then and there. But I forced myself to stop. Not yet. Not now. If I confronted her, I'd lose the upper hand. Better to play it smarter. I cleared my throat loudly from the hallway, my footsteps slow and deliberate as I headed toward my bedroom. I heard a frantic shuffling behind me, Amanda shoving papers back in the drawer, rushing to compose her face before she emerged, as if nothing had happened. "Charlotte, all done?" I didn't hear the water stop, just thought I'd peek in while I was waiting. That smile, that sick, fake smile. It wasn't strangers you had to fear. It was the ones who wrapped their greed in the language of family. That night, after double-checking every lock on every window, I gathered all my important documents. The deed to the house, bank cards, insurance papers, trust agreements, and I locked them all away in the small safe I had quietly installed months ago. A few days later, Emily came to visit. We sat in the kitchen, sipping tea, the pleasant company warming me inside and out. Midway through, Emily hesitated, fidgeting with her mug. "Charlotte, there's something I've been debating whether or not to tell you." "Go on, Emily," I said gently. "No secrets between us." She bit her lip and leaned closer. A few days ago, a strange woman knocked on my door and started asking a bunch of questions about you. Very detailed stuff: your health, your income, whether you have children, if you're planning to remarry. A deep dread settled in my stomach. What did she look like? I asked quietly. Emily described her, and my heart sank. It had Amanda's fingerprints all over it. To be sure, I asked Tom, an ex-cop who now worked with me at the studio, to do a little digging. It didn't take long for the truth to surface. Amanda had hired a private investigator. She had ordered a full background check on me, my finances, and was even trying to look into the lives of my partners. In that moment, whatever shred of hope I had left crumbled. To them, I wasn't family. I was a living lottery ticket they hadn't cashed in yet. And strangely, after the wave of anguish and anger passed, I smiled. If they wanted to play a game, I was more than willing to play along. And this time, I would be the one setting the rules. That day, while Amanda was over, I deliberately picked up the phone and, in a voice loud enough for the whole living room to hear, I called my lawyer, Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, could you come by my house tomorrow afternoon? I'd like to discuss revising my will. The sooner, the better. The moment the words left my mouth, I heard the distinct clatter of a glass being fumbled in the living room. I smiled to myself. When family turns into scavengers, the best revenge is to give them sleepless nights. The next afternoon, right on time, Mr. Miller arrived. And coincidentally, Amanda showed up too, this time with a basket overflowing with fruit. Seeing the lawyer sitting in the living room, her smile stiffened like a mask glued to the wrong face. It was strained, brittle, almost laughable. I invited Mr. Miller to sit, and making sure Amanda could hear every word, I got straight to the point. Mr. Miller, I said calmly, I'd like to update my will. It's important to have everything in order before it's too late. I gave a theatrical sigh for effect, my voice dropping to a somber tone. Given my age and recent health scares, I think it's best to be very clear. There's the house, my savings, and my shares in the studio. Amanda was perched on the edge of the sofa, peeling an apple with exaggerated care, but her ears were pricked like a hawk's. I've thought about it carefully, I continued, smiling just enough to twist the knife. I plan to leave half of my estate to the Los Angeles Photographers Association to establish a fund for older photographers who, like me, are still finding beauty and passion in their later years. The apple slipped from Amanda's grasp, hitting the floor with a dull, sickening thud. Her face went white. Her lips trembled. Her eyes, wide and frantic, stared at me as if I had just slapped her. "Charlotte, you," she stammered, unable to form a sentence. I ignored her completely, turning back to Mr. Miller to discuss the details of the donation, as if Amanda wasn't even there. Mr. Miller nodded thoughtfully, jotting everything down without a trace of emotion. When we were done and Mr. Miller had left, Amanda remained behind, frozen on the corner of the sofa, an empty shell of her usual cheerful self. "Charlotte, are you serious? Benjamin is your son." I looked at her, my gaze calm and unwavering. "I have thought it through," I said, my voice soft but firm. "Money is just money. I'd rather it leave a meaningful legacy than become a bargaining chip for those who never truly cared." Amanda's face contorted, the fake cheer dissolving into something raw and bitter, but she didn't dare argue. That night, I leaned back on my sofa and opened the feed from the hidden camera I had quietly installed in Benjamin's house a few weeks prior, aimed only at the living room. On the screen, Amanda and Benjamin were arguing heatedly. Amanda was waving her arms in frustration, her voice sharp and shrill. Benjamin sat, slumped, smoking one cigarette after another, his face a mask of despair. I watched them in silence, feeling no triumph. Just a sadness so deep it felt fossilized. The deepest pain in life isn't loneliness. It's realizing that even the bonds of blood can curdle into a cold, transactional hostility. I knew then this ugly charade had to end. The next day, I called Benjamin, Amanda, Patricia, and Robert, inviting them to dinner the following weekend. There was hesitation, tense and guarded voices over the phone, but in the end, they all agreed. On Saturday evening, we gathered at a quiet restaurant. The private room was dimly lit, casting a soft glow that did little to hide the tension at the table. Patricia's eyes darted around nervously. Amanda fussed with her fork, pretending not to notice the tremor in her hands. Benjamin sat stiff and grim, his jaw tight. Only Robert maintained some semblance of composure, but even he couldn't hide the unease in his eyes. The dishes arrived, untouched. The air thickened like wet cement. I cleared my throat, slicing through the silence. "I invited you all here to clear the air," I said calmly, my eyes sweeping over them before landing squarely on Amanda and Patricia. The room froze. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled a small black device from my purse, a voice recorder. Every breath at the table seemed to catch at the same time. I pressed play. "Mom, you know Charlotte only gets, what, a couple thousand a month in retirement? It's barely enough. If she gets sick, we'll have to take care of her, and we just can't." "Exactly. I told you, we have to plan ahead. She's already a financial liability. Better to get her to sign over the deed to the house now, while she's still clear-headed. And let's be honest, her health isn't great. She might not last that long." Amanda's and Patricia's voices rang out, loud and undeniable, each word landing like a slap across the room. This was the art of surviving betrayal, not by enduring it, but by choosing the exact moment to lay your cards on the table. The recording continued to play. No one spoke. No one dared. Amanda's face was ashen, her hands shaking as she gripped the edge of the table. Patricia sat with wide eyes, twisting the edge of the tablecloth in her fingers, panic seeping from every pore. Benjamin stared at Amanda with disbelief and barely contained rage. Robert sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat as he closed his eyes to the wreckage unfolding before him. The truth was out, and there would be no going back. The recording finally stopped. I calmly switched off the device and looked around the table, my gaze steady, unflinching. "This recording," I said quietly, "but it cut through the room like a razor. I captured it during my New Year's visit to your home. I came with the simple hope of a family reunion, and instead, this is what I heard." I paused, letting the words hang in the thick, icy air. So I left. Not because a neighbor had an emergency, but because my own heart was already frozen. Another pause. Then I spoke again, each word measured, deliberate. "These past few months, I've done a lot of thinking. Is a person's worth nothing more than the number in their bank account? Does living on a modest pension mean I deserve to be discarded, conspired against?" I smiled, not with bitterness or anger, but with a quiet, hardened clarity. I realized something. My worth was never in anyone else's hands to begin with, and it certainly isn't diminished by your contempt. My voice was clear and steady, cutting through the thick, suffocating silence. "And so," I continued, "I have officially updated and notarized my will. Every eye was fixed on me. Upon my passing, my house will be donated to the community's senior housing program, providing shelter for elderly residents in need. My savings will go toward my own care, my health, my travels to ensure I live out my final years with freedom and dignity. And the profits and assets from my photography studio will fund the creation of the Silver Dreams Fund through the Los Angeles Photographers Association, to support other senior creators who refuse to fade away." The room was suffocatingly quiet. Amanda's face was chalk white. Patricia kept her head down, silent and shamed. Benjamin's lips moved as if to say something, anything, but in the end, he just closed his eyes, the weight of it all crushing him. Then, the silence shattered. Robert slammed his hand on the table, a loud, angry crack. "You two," he said, his voice tight with rage and shaking with disappointment, "have gone too far. You have disgraced yourselves." He turned to me, his voice breaking, and gave a deep bow from his seat. "Charlotte, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I should have done more. I should have stopped this. Please, forgive us." Benjamin finally broke. He grabbed my hand, sobbing openly, completely undone. "Mom, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Please, give me another chance." Amanda sat frozen, her head bowed, a lifeless sculpture of regret. I sat still, looking at them, not with triumph or vengeance, but with a deep, heart-wrenching sadness. The most fragile thing in the world isn't glass. It's family love, subjected to the crushing weight of greed. I turned to Benjamin, my voice soft but unmoving. "Benjamin, don't cry." He looked up at me, his face wet with tears. "Mother and son, we are blood. That is inseparable," I spoke softly. "But from today on, we live separate lives. I no longer require your love or your respect, and I will not offer you unconditional sacrifice either. We are family, yes, but we are also individuals, standing on our own 2 feet." I let my eyes sweep across the table, lingering briefly on each face before settling into a soft, almost serene smile. In fact, I already have plans for next month. Iceland, Norway. Heading north to chase the aurora, to capture the Arctic light and snow. "My new life," I said simply, "is just beginning." No one spoke. No one dared. The dinner ended awkwardly, dissolving into silence. Benjamin insisted on driving me home. The whole way back, he gripped the steering wheel tightly, opening his mouth several times but failing to form any words. When we pulled up in front of my house, I reached for the door handle. Before I could get out, he grabbed my arm. "Mom," his voice cracked. Then he threw the car door open, and in an instant, he fell to his knees on the cold driveway. "Mom, please, I'm begging you, give me another chance." Seeing him kneeling there, his shoulders shaking with sobs, something inside me twisted. This was, after all, the child I had raised with my own 2 hands. I stepped toward him slowly, my heart aching, and gently pulled him to his feet. "Benjamin," I said softly, placing a hand on his trembling shoulder. "We all make mistakes. What matters isn't the apology in a moment of regret. It's the lifelong accountability that comes after." I patted his shoulder, my voice quiet and unwavering. "I didn't say I forgive you, and I didn't say I don't. Some fractures, no matter how you mend them, are never the same. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and family love should never demand endless sacrifice." 1 year later, Emily, 2 old friends from our photography group, and I set off on a road trip across half of America. We photographed the Native American culture on the quiet streets of Santa Fe. We gasped at the towering peaks of the Rocky Mountains. We captured the wild fireworks and raw humanity of Mardi Gras in New Orleans. My photography had improved by leaps and bounds. Through my lens, I was no longer just capturing landscapes, but hearts, stories, the simple, wind-beaten faces of everyday life. Our little photography studio had blossomed too, taking on documentary projects and community exhibitions. My retired life was more intense, more free, and more fulfilling than any chapter that had come before it. Sometimes, Benjamin would fly to whatever city I was exploring, just to spend a few days with me. There was more space between us now. But within that space, there was a quiet, genuine respect. He no longer asked about money, no longer hinted at inheritances. He just listened to my travel stories, studied the photographs I brought back, smiled at my stories. As for Amanda, after that dinner, she never appeared before me again. I heard whispers that her marriage to Benjamin had completely unraveled afterward. Endless arguments, rumors of divorce. But that was their journey now, not mine. I had long since moved on. One day, Emily wrote a short article about my story and sent it to a well-known magazine. The title was "From an Invisible Mother to an Infinite Sky." To our surprise, the article created a sensation. Hundreds of letters and messages poured in, people sharing their own struggles, their lost years, their tentative, hopeful new beginnings. The media began to spotlight senior independence, questioning how society could truly offer its elders respect and freedom. And I, a woman who had only wanted to live a quiet life after retirement, found myself, by a strange twist of fate, becoming a small, shining symbol. I would sometimes get letters from other silver-haired wanderers who asked me how to rebuild a life from scratch, how to love themselves again after years of being forgotten. I answered every single one as best I could. I told them, from the depths of my own experience, it's never too late. Your life can always begin again if you are willing. Right now, sunlight is streaming through my window. A mug of hot tea sits by my hand. All around me, the soft chatter of kindred spirits, fellow travelers, fills the air with laughter and light. And in my heart, There is only excitement for the next adventure. Looking back, all the pain, the betrayals, the disappointments, they were nothing more than scattered stones on the path. They didn't stop me. They built the very road beneath my feet. The final stretch of life isn't about waiting. It's about blossoming. My worth was never printed on a check. My worth was, and always will be, choosing to live fully, bravely, and brilliantly as myself. This is my answer to all those who are still walking this road.